you get your ballots and do your research, you might still be scratching your heads about why your city needs to ask you to do some of this stuff, like renaming a city department. This is why we have Marshall. Someone tipped off a reporter about the contract to rebuild DIA, and now the city attorney in Denver is asking to see everyone's cell phone bills to try to figure out who. RTD ought to trademark the term struggle bus, though it sounds like tonight they're on the struggle train, just in time for an event where people will want to use them. And just in time to end the week, your good news makes us smile. Next. Denver wants to create a Department of Transportation. Okay, but why do voters need to vote on that? North Glen wants to make the city codes gender neutral. Why does that have to get put on an election ballot? Politics guy Marshall Zellinger takes us into city-chartered territory.
Beyond the statewide issues like Propositions CC and DD, your ballot will have local races and issues. In Denver, that includes 2A through 2D. Can Denver change Public Works to the Department of Transportation? Can firefighters add the rank of emergency medical technician? Should Denver elected leaders have to maintain residency in the city or the district they serve? Why can't the mayor or city council just decide this?
Municipalities can be in charge of significant things like personnel matters. That's why voters in Denver are voting on what may seem relatively insignificant, or why can't they just do that with an ordinance or something, but it's actually something that's in the charter.
These dusty old books, the city charter. Think of voting on a charter issue no different than voting on a constitutional amendment for the state.
I mean, that's what a charter is. It's like a local constitution.
All of these cities are home rule and have local constitutions, city charters, which is why voters in North Glen are being asked to vote on 3F, making the city charter gender neutral. Parker voters have 8 ballot issues about amending the charter, most notably making the town administrator the top boss. Instead of departments answering to the mayor, voters are being asked to let the town administrator be in charge of all departments, the police chief, and be the point person in case of emergency.
That's the whole point of home rule, is citizens are governing the key provisions of their municipality, and so you have to ask them permission to change something.
While looking at the charter archives today, I found an interesting tidbit. Denver voters are deciding on 2D. Should elected leaders have to live in Denver and council members live in the district they serve? Well, in 1875, this Denver charter required aldermen, which is city council person, that shall, after the election, remove from the ward for which they were elected, the city council shall hereby make it their duty to declare the seat vacant. Basically, if they move, they are no longer the council person. What's old is new again, Steve.
It's amazing that book has lasted for that long.
I thought if I blew on it, it would disintegrate. A quick quiz. How many cities or towns in Colorado are home rule cities or towns, which means you might have to vote on a charter issue?
Ooh. I'm going to go with 40.
102.
Oh, I was so close with the 40.
Yeah.
Wow, I should have known that. Marshall, thank you. Well, forgive me if I read this next story too fast. Remember how Senate Democrats had a 2,000-page bill read really, really fast by those multiple computers at the same time? Senate Republicans sued, and in March, a Denver court ruled that the Democrats shouldn't have done that. Now, the Senate Democrats are appealing that decision, arguing that the legislative branch has its own rules and the legislature should be the one to figure out how to implement them, not judges in the judicial branch. Republican Senator Cory Gardner has got President Trump's back. He supports a resolution condemning the process of the impeachment inquiry into the president. In a statement, Gardner told us the serious investigation has turned into a political circus. So while we were emailing Gardner's office, we asked if his support of this resolution means he thinks it's appropriate for a president to ask foreign governments to investigate an opponent. And once again, he ignored that question. On a night that needs more public transit to and from Denver, RTD is offering less. The agency sent an alert this afternoon saying the operator shortage forced them to drastically cut back on E-Line service. 11 scheduled rides were canceled. The Nuggets are kicking off their season tonight at Pepsi Center, so we called RTD to ask, why are there no other options? RTD decided to put 6 rides back on the schedule. So RTD says it has to send out alerts early, even if it is still working to fill the holes. And once they find operators, they update those alerts. So you could watch the Nuggets season opener from home if you wanted to. Altitude bought that time on Channel 20 at 7 o'clock. And for those who keep asking me on Twitter, no, Altitude did not buy time for the Avalanche, but I will keep pushing for it. Denver wants to know who's been talking to reporters. The city attorney's office confirms that they are investigating who gave a reporter a heads up about the city terminating a contract with its airport partner. Our colleague down the street, Brian Moss at Channel 4, broke this story about the internal investigation. He was also the one who got the tip about the DIA contract. The city attorney's spokesman told me they are assessing the situation. So I asked how that's different than an investigation. He told me that he hates the word investigation. So yeah, this is an investigation. The city attorney is requesting cell phone records from several city staffers to try to figure out who passed along this confidential information. So you got the city of Denver asking to see cell phone bills to figure out who tipped off a reporter. Just weeks ago, our Lori Lizarraga and her photographer had to stay inside a little makeshift pen in the hallway of the courthouse during an important trial. We've seen other reporters in town forced to do the same. The police department shuts off the scanner, keeping pesky reporters from asking questions about current events, only to release details a few days later. And out in Strasburg, you have a fire board facing scrutiny, then deciding it's best to keep cameras out of public meetings. It sure seems like government around here would love to keep journalists out. Makes you wonder why. Why, if everything is running as smoothly as it should, why shouldn't the public be allowed to watch instead of just taking their word for it? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that no matter how many things are thrown at us, trying to close our eyes and yours, we're still watching. Now, we have talked about South Metro firefighters diagnosed with cancer. We've talked about this at West Metro, too. Now add 7 Aurora firefighters currently battling cancer. The department has decided they aren't doing enough to protect their own. Like South Metro and West Metro, Anusha Roy has learned Aurora is changing how it's doing things in hopes of saving its firefighters.
Aurora Fire is a part of a troubling puzzle, how best to protect their firefighters from cancer. Now their deputy chief, Cindy Anderson, says they're working on their latest idea that could save lives.
Partnering with an educational institution or potentially a hospital to look at expanding those screenings, and not only expanding the type of screenings, but getting them sooner. Our cancers come on sooner than the average public.
The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health found more firefighters are diagnosed with digestive, oral, respiratory, and urinary cancer than the general population. They also found firefighters have a 14% higher death rate from cancer. So Anderson said their goal is to find the sweet spot for cancer screenings.
Do they need to be more frequently? So not only sooner, but maybe twice a year? I think those are the things that research is going to help us with.
When it comes to younger firefighters, the International Association of Firefighters say there isn't enough research and hopes a new CDC firefighter cancer registry that was just set up last year will help.
Where someone may get screened for colon cancer at age 50, we need a baseline and we need to start at least at 40.
But waiting for those numbers before making decisions on cancer prevention isn't an option. Several departments have already changed their protocol, like rinsing their gear off after a fire and changing into new gear right away. Deputy Chief Anderson said expanding their screenings would be an additional line of defense. So cleaning and inspecting firefighting gear is really important because it's meant to help to keep those carcinogens away from their skin and make sure that their gear honestly is just still working properly. But the cost for Aurora Fire to do that every year, Steve, is around $100,000 just to be inspecting and keeping that gear up. So it brings up the good point for the smaller fire departments, the volunteer fire departments, trying to do the best that they can, but none of this is free.
Not to mention, this is a job that's been done this way for so long. How are people buying into that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a big culture shift happening right now. And when it comes to testing, Aurora Fire was saying, yeah, our firefighters are totally on board with that. But when it comes to changing habits, the washing off, the changing out of the gear, that's still taking a little bit of time. But you have to remember that, these are habits for some people that have gone back 2-3 decades, their entire career.
Yeah, you've done it so long, you almost need a few more reminders.
Exactly.
Anusha Roy, thank you. Denver used to have an old trolley system. While most of it's gone, there are a few pieces still standing.
I think it's important to maintain history of places that have it.
So they're getting to work.
If we lose these structures, they're gone for good.
Fridays are our favorite.
My good news is I'm blessed. You know, I've been saved. I was a recovering addict. I've been clean for 10 years.
Because they are filled with your good news. Next. Earlier this month, several federal judges put a stop to a Trump administration rule, the so-called public charge rule. It would have made it more difficult for immigrants to get permanent U.S. residency if they used public benefits like food stamps and Medicaid. Also earlier this month, the acting head of Citizenship and Immigration Services was in our studio, and we asked Ken Cuccinelli about some reporting we've done on public charge. We've heard from families who are concerned about having their kids on Medicaid because of the impact of this new rule and what it might do to their immigration status. Is that the intention of this?
I'm really glad you asked about that, because one of the changes made in the final rule based on public comments was to exclude exactly the kind of children you describe from coverage by the rule. So Medicaid for children and for those under 21 and pregnant women, including after birth for a period of time, that's not covered. There are a lot of things that don't get swept into the public charge regulation and the requirement for self-sufficiency. For adults, health care would matter, but not for children.
I want to go back to a question you've been asked before. The quote is, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." The poem goes on from there. A lot of people have questioned whether this rule contradicts that poem on the Statue of Liberty.
Well,
does it?
We write law, not poetry. We enforce law, not poetry. So what this regulation does is enforce the 1996 law that Bill Clinton signed, passed on, as I said, a wildly bipartisan basis. And that's all we have to go on. As some reporters, ask questions about that poem, and people can have their opinions about it. But that isn't what we enforce, and it isn't what we look to for guidance.
And I do want to go back to something that was a story after that question was initially asked. You asserted that this poem was actually intended for European immigrants. Do you still feel that way?
It isn't a question of, what I feel. Back 100 years ago, immigration happened largely by boat. Now we've got a land issue coming across our southern border. And from Europe, that largely showed up in New York. It was the main port of entry. From Asia and points west, San Francisco would have been sort of your equivalent. So that was just at the time, the early 1900s, when that poem went on the statue. It wasn't part of the statue. It was added in 1903. It was part of a private fundraiser, good old American fundraising. And that's just who it was directed to. So it has no relevance for the regulation. It has no relevance for the law. I don't sit here as a historian of poem plaques around the United States of America.
Again, several federal judges have issued injunctions during court battles regarding public charge. You can see our full interview with Ken Cuccinelli on our YouTube channel.
Well, we get to enjoy 2 seasons this weekend, feeling like summertime tomorrow with highs near 70, and then winter as we head towards Sunday with some bitterly cold temperatures and a bit of snow. Winding down the work week, looking beautiful across downtown Denver. Stormy skies off to the southeast, a lot of rain, but all eyes out to the northwest where our next storm system is coming in from. We already have these winter weather watches in place, Denver included, the Front Range Mountains, foothills, and then just a bit off to the east. Tonight, still beautiful. Clear skies, an overnight low down to 37. We'll stay mild, really statewide with 20s and 30s. Tomorrow, another sunny day with highs at 69, low 70s across the eastern plains with 50s going way up high. Futurecast looking quiet early tomorrow morning. This takes us to the dinner hour, 5, 6 o'clock. You're good to go. But by 11, here comes the rain, that cold front sinking in from the north. Everything switches to snow overnight. And by Sunday morning, you are waking up to a few flurries out there. This cold front means business. It not only brings us the snowfall, but it also helps to cool us down tremendously. We'll be stuck in the 20s for 3 days. Snowfall amounts, these are just preliminary, so keep in mind these will be changing. Right now it looks like 4 to 8 here for the city, with higher amounts further west, and then up in the foothills, the mountains, close to a foot, possibly 1.5 feet. A quick check on that 7-day forecast showing snow Monday and Tuesday as well, but right now Halloween looks mild and dry. We'll be back right after this.
The last time anybody really needed a trolley ride in Denver was about 1930. But that is not stopping the city of Denver and a nonprofit group from restoring an old trolley stop near Wash Park. Our own Nelson Garcia shows us there's a life lesson going on here, too.
Though he's nowhere near a classroom, Marshall Riley is here to learn.
I think this pillar is about as smooth as it's going to get.
He's a student studying architecture at the Community College of Denver. He's a volunteer working to restore an old trolley stop built by a neighbor about 100 years ago near the corner of Downing and Marion.
I believe that gentleman built this trolley stop because he got tired of watching people wait for the trolley and stand out in the rain.
Years of rain, wind, and winter have taken its toll, prompting Riley to help out a nonprofit called HistoriCorps and project supervisor Sarah Mees.
We restore structures on public lands.
They preserve history.
There'll be enough left that we'll be able to trace it out. If we lose these structures, they're gone for good.
While giving students like Riley real-life experience.
I've never done much restoration or demolition, any roof work, really anything along these lines at all.
We are re-roofing, so we're installing the cedar shingles.
And though the surroundings have outgrown the need for a trolley stop,
It's cool to be able to, reinvigorate a piece of history.
neighbors come by, showing their appreciation for a place not forgotten.
And this is a building that you come to love, and it's what you see every day. It's your surroundings and what you're comfortable with.
I think it's important to maintain history of places that have it.
For Next, I'm Nelson Garcia.
Plus, it'd be super cool to have a trolley back. The plan is to have the trolley stop fully restored by November 10th. Fridays on Next mean good news, and yours is next. Fridays are our favorite here because we get to hear all of your good news, and today we found it in Denver's Curtis Park.
Well, there's not a cloud in the sky, I know that much. It's beautiful.
Oh, my good news, I got 3 bikes, and this is my favorite now. My other 2 bikes are jealous.
My good news, it's not snowing. No, I don't like that one either. My good news, it's not, don't look at the camera.
Also, just act normal, dude.
Oh, I'm not normal.
It's not snowing, it's a beautiful day today.
It's not snowing, it's a beautiful day today.
Yeah.
And I just put this on for them scooters who won't hit me. I need a mirror so I can see them come behind me because they don't have no bell on them.
There's always smiles. There's always somebody that hasn't seen each other for many years, and it's like a reunion place.
My good news is I'm blessed.
My good news is keeping your faith.
I was a recovering addict. I've been clean for 10 years.
I had a rough time a few years ago and changed my life, and now I'm prosperous and doing good in my life.
Honestly, that's my good news is that I'm getting to hang out with my heart.
Everybody seems happy out here.
Your feedback quickly. Kate says, when I ran into Marshall this afternoon at the store, I mistakenly called him Steve. Must be the beard. See you next time.